Welcome to another video, everyone. Today we're going to be doing an overview of Legion as a faction and just kind of some of the things that might be considered a bit overpowered and some of the things that might be considered a bit underpowered, because Legion, as we all know, is not very balanced. So we're just going to be taking a look at that today. First off, we're going to be looking at their bots. Now, I have mixed feelings about a lot of their bots. Some of them I really want to be good, and some of them just, they don't quite pull it off, okay? So first we got T1 bots. Let's pull these guys out. T1 bots, and honestly, the T1 bots are lacking in my opinion. They don't really have a great advantage against any other faction, except for maybe their ballista. I haven't, now to be fair, I have not used the ballista very much yet. I want to, and I'm going to eventually, but so far mostly I've just used these four. The Lobber has a very weak health and a very weak damage, but it's also pretty cheap, but I don't think the cheapness makes up for it. So, and I think it might have about the same range as a normal plasma bot, but it's just like, man, is this worth it? I don't know, because the more health you have, the more likely you are to be able to repair and survive a fight. The Centaur is actually pretty good. It's actually one of my favorite units to use because it has that speed. It can quickly gain distance on its enemy and do very nice raids. It's pretty healthy as well. It has almost 1,000 health. The Karganos I am not a huge fan of, actually, after using it more. The fact that its range is limited and it's very slow, and in order to have like maximum DPS it has to get in the secondary range. I don't think its laser is quite powerful enough to make it worth it. I mean, you're only doing 78 damage at the longest distance and it costs almost 300 metal. It's a pretty weak unit in my opinion, but it's the strongest one they have, so not a huge fan of that. The Goblin is weaker than any, it's like a mix between a scout and a grunt, but it's slow and it doesn't, I mean, it has a burst damage, which is nice, and you might be able to 1v1 grunt or something with it, but they're not like super powerful by any stretch. So I honestly, like, most of the T1 bots that I have used, not really that strong compared to the other factions. Okay, that's just my opinion. And then this guy is obviously where I think where Legion will probably shine, is their rocket bot. It has 1,000 health, which is quite a bit more than other factions, so you can potentially weave it in and out of combat a little bit more and do quite a bit extra damage with it. So what I would do is I would also oh, another thing, it seems like it has a bit of a better line of sight. I think other rocket bots might have a line of sight here or something like that. So it looks like it has a couple buffs compared to the other factions. So I would look at incorporating rocket bots if you're going bots for Legion. I would use probably the Centaur and the Ballista and combine those together. Have these guys protect the ballistas and the ballistas raining down missile fire on their enemies. Okay, I don't want to overview every single unit because that's going to take us forever. But I'll just point out some of the stronger ones. For Legion bots, the Infestor is very situational. It's a support unit and sucks, honestly, at fighting. It's not that great at fighting things, but it can be good at getting behind economy and doing economy damage. This I haven't really used that much. I've seen other people use it and it does pack a punch, you know. That's a pretty good shot there. And it has a very high DPS. The only problem is it moves very slowly. I would say this, if properly backed up, can definitely be a good support unit. Obviously snipers though will be able to take it out pretty easily. Think of it similar to a fat boy. That's kind of how you're going to want to use it, in my opinion. You know, Strider I think is very good. It has pretty decent health, and honestly it's similar to the Sprinter and the Fiend in how you're going to want to use it, but I think it's a bit stronger. And it has 270 DPS, so that's pretty good as well. The Aquabus, I've actually never said the name. I always just call it the Rail Spider. So the Rail Spider is very situational on when it's going to be really good. I would say anytime you can abuse the ability to climb up on the walls and get on top of surfaces, I would use it more, because it does have a really long range, and it has a little bit of a lower DPS. You know, it's only 125, so it's not like a sniper where it can kill things in basically one shot. So I'd say this is more situational, and if you have lots of energy, you can start spamming them a little bit more. The flanks, pretty garbage. It costs 600, which is twice as much as the Shockbot for Armada, and it doesn't have any like major buffs. I think it has a little bit more health, maybe twice as much health, but like this thing, it dies pretty quickly, and it has such a short range, and it's very slow, so I'm not a huge fan of these. The Belcher, this is going to be decent. The main thing lacking, I believe, for Legion bots though is the range. The only real heavy or longer range things they have are the Incinerator and the Rail Spider. So that's kind of my opinion. Like, two of these I think are okay. These are situational. This is probably a little bit better, but none of them are like good. You know, none of them are fantastic units. And the Infestor is a support unit, and actually it's a very good support unit. Let's just be fair. It's better than any other, like the Butler or the Twitcher even. It has benefits that the Twitcher doesn't have, but then negatives, as in it can't build radar or defenses or units really except for itself. So it's a very good support unit though. Okay, now let's move on to tanks. So we got T1 tanks out here. Is that it? I thought there was one more. Where's our... here we go. The barrage. See if we can't make a path. There we go. Okay. Oh, and then with the Lance. So the T1 tanks are decent. I don't love the Helios. It has a it has a decent DPS, but its range is pretty small and it's very weak. So you're gonna want to, but it also, I mean, to be fair, it's spammable. It doesn't have a huge metal cost as well. So yeah, I would say these are more situational. They are fast, which can be nice. I would use them more like a blitz than anything else, which for me personally, I don't usually use the blitz for extended periods of time in the game. This is more, and that's the thing, is like both of these are very similar to the blitz in how I would use them. And the Aurus is better than the blitz. I've already done tests on that. It's cheaper than the blitz and better than the blitz. It has a very long range and it has a burst fire. So it's very good at like poking in and out of battle and doing decent damage. So I really like the Ares. I think the Ares you could win games with probably, especially if you do an early Ares raid. It's gonna be so much better than doing scouts or pawns or grunts. You can just dumpster the enemy with these things. The Helios, it's a medium, you know, it's a skirmish tank, but it just, I don't know. I don't love the damage on it. I think it's a little bit too low. I would rather go with the Decurion, which is a Gatling tank, and it can shell down lots of fire. Let me see, there we go. Boom. So these things are much more hefty in how much damage they can withstand. They have 2,500 health. whereas this has barely almost 1000. Not really enough. So what I would do is I would have these heavy assault tanks and have some lances behind them, and you're going to be really well off with these. My favorite combo though is the barrage mixed with the Gatling tank. The barrage shoots out napalm, which covers a wide area, and if you get a couple of these going, you can make the whole area in front of you napalm, and that can cause a lot of problems for your enemies because they won't be able to push on you. So they're honestly, most of their T1 tanks I like. Not a huge fan of the Helios. Now, T2 tanks. I have not done a ton of looking into all of their tanks. By the way, I'm not pulling out any of the Cortex vehicles that are available because they do have a bunch of Cortex vehicles available as well. I'm not really looking at those. The quick shot, I haven't really used that much, so I can't really speak on it, but it looks like it might be okay, except for, you know, it might be okay. It has limited range though. It's more of the raiding unit. It's probably faster than, or better than the lightning tank though, in how much damage it gives, I think. I have not got a chance to use the Triton, but I am told that it's actually fairly good for the amount of cost it has. So it's got looks like a heavy cannon and then a machine gun turret on the front, and the heavy cannon can go out a bit further, so that is pretty cool. And it's also amphibious, which is nice. So I want to check this out a little bit more before I speak on whether it is good or not. Now the Medusa is very good. The only problem is it has to be backed up by something. It shoots out a volley of heat-seeking rockets. So it's better than any other missile trucks that I know of in the game, because it will target its enemy and like track it. So if the enemy's over here and then moves this way, the missiles will track the enemy and hit it still. So that's what's really good about the Medusa. Very strong. The Mantis I haven't really played around with, but I hear they're very good. Just the fact that they can cause harassment at longer ranges as well. And if the enemy doesn't really have any anti-air, then it can be pretty good at just minimal amounts of damage. So yeah, a pretty good unit from what I've heard, although I haven't given it a very good shot yet myself. The napalm, this thing is insane. It's just a constant volley of napalm. You only really need one of them and you can just ruin someone's day. Like, look at that. That's insane. You can just make the whole ground fire. So if you have proper backup with this thing, it is going to really hurt the enemy team. It has very awesome range as well. And then next to Gladiator, this is one I haven't really liked that much when I've used it. It just has such a short range for its cannon. I think the main cannon needs to be a little bit stronger. The dual lasers are nice in theory, but what I've had problems with is they don't really have accurate targeting. They're one of the worst targeting lasers I've seen in the game so far. That could just be a bug, but not a huge fan of the heavy multi-weapon assault tank yet. Maybe we'll get a little bit of a buff in the future. But anyway, as far as good units, I think the boat, from what I've heard, is decent. The Medusa, the Inferno, and the Mantis are your best bets. This is probably okay, and this I'm not a fan of. All right, and now we're going to move on to T3, the Karis. This thing has such a small range. It's like, for T3, you're going to probably want a longer range than that, especially for how slow it is. Now, it does have a decent health pool of 23, and it's relatively weak, or low metal cost of only 2,000. But I still think this T3 unit falls off in comparison to Cortex or Armada T3. The Cortex has such a significant range advantage, and this thing just has such a small health pool. I'm not sure if it's worth it, but it has a decent DPS. Now we have the Mukad or Mukade. I'm not really sure. This thing is a powerhouse of destruction at 5,000 metal. I mean, think about that. That's 5,000 metal compared to a Titan, which is like what, like 10,000, 20,000 metal, and then the Juggernaut, which is 60,000 metal. So a lot of the Legion T3 units are a lot cheaper, but pack such a heavy punch. It's pretty incredible. So the Makeda has a couple railguns on the side, and also has missile launchers as well. So there's like or Gatling guns. So it has Gatling, it has rails, and it has missile launchers. So side firing, I can't really fire. I can't target anything with it, so it has to actually see an enemy to shoot. But anyway, the machine gun turret can lay down and fire in the front and in the back. What is going on here? And in the back, so you can shoot both directions. And then the rail guns can snipe planes. Okay, basically I think the range is quite large. Yeah, anywhere in this area it can snipe down planes or other units. And then the missiles do like a devastating pile of damage, and I believe they're heat seeking as well. So it's like it's just a powerhouse of destruction. I really like the Makeda, but you can argue it might not be quite as good as other T3 for other factions, but it is a pretty heavy amount of DPS for the cost of 5,000 metal. Now we got the Praetorian. This thing is the equivalent to the Titan or the Juggernaut for the other factions, and I'm not sure. I haven't loved the Praetorian that much. It does have a napalm cannon, which is nice. Let me see, where's napalm? There they are. There's the napalm. So like it does have potential, right? Like this is a lot of, you know, burn damage and stuff. It has a lot of potential. I haven't, to be fair, played with it enough to fully give it a good, like, positive. I'm not positive that it's like super strong or anything, but it seems fair. You know, if it's not like overpowered, it's at least decent, right? It can hold its own in battle. The one problem with it is at long range, it's not got very much DPS, whereas with the Titan can, you know, chip away at this thing's health at long range, and the Praetorian can barely do anything because the railguns really don't add that much firepower. In order to get that 1,400 DPS, you have to be shooting at closest range. So you have to be using your cannons, your railguns, and your machine guns, and your napalm, and then you get that massive damage. And that's kind of how it is with a lot of the Legion units. You have to push your enemy to get their maximum damage off. So it's kind of the risk with it. All right, well, I mean, that's about it, guys. There's not much more I really need to talk about here. And my conclusion is that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on the Legion faction. I think some of their units will never be used because they're just a little bit too weak. Obviously, we see they've been working on a lot of things such as the solar panels and the wind turbines and things like that, and adding little bits and pieces here and there. So we know they are working on it, and it will eventually get completed. I am confident of that. But currently in the state, I would not recommend using bots very often. They're a bit weaker. I would definitely recommend using vehicles. They have the most potential currently, and their T3 is decent. Maybe not quite as strong as other T3 like Cortex, but it's decent. It can hold its own in battle. So that's the conclusion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched to the end, definitely subscribe, because we will be getting out content like this every time I get a chance. And as always, I will see you on the battlefield.